Hi, everyone. It is good to be here with you today. This week, we've been looking at Holy Week reflections, and today we're on Wednesday, and we've been looking at what Jesus might have been doing throughout the week. And on Wednesday, we think that maybe it was pretty quiet and that Jesus took a rest. And maybe we think, why would he take a rest? But if you think about what was happening the last few days, he had a very exciting day on Sunday coming into Jerusalem, and it was an exciting day. And the events that happened there on Monday, he turned the tables, he cleaned the temple, and that must have been very emotional for him and an exhausting day. And then on Tuesday, we looked at that he would have done some teaching, but also talking to the leaders and having those confrontational conversations. And I would think by Wednesday he was probably tired maybe and just needed that rest. And one thing we know about Jesus is he knew when to take rest. He knew when he needed to just take time out, time to be with God and just to rest. And so maybe he spent time with the disciples. He just kind of was low key. But when you think about what was coming up, he knew what was coming up. And he knew that the days ahead would be more difficult, that be more probably more emotional draining when you really think about it. And so that day of rest right in the middle of the week, I think was key for Jesus to take. He could have done a lot more. He could have taught more. He could have been with the crowds and did more teaching. He could have done more miracles. And there's so much more he could have done. Even with his disciples, I wonder what that day of rest looked like. And did they eat meals together? Did they just spend quality time, laugh together? We're not really sure. But he could have even taught them more, as we see that they didn't always understand what Jesus said. And so I'm sure that he could have taken more of that time out to teach even them more. And yeah, it's kind of interesting to ask that question. I wonder what that day of rest looked like for him. And I think him knowing that he had that day of rest and thinking about what was coming, I think that if it was me, I would have been anxious. I would have kind of been like, I don't know about this. And really, for him to be able to take a day of rest just shows his trust in his Heavenly Father, his trust in God, that he knew that God was in control. He knew that God had it. And something I've been saying to myself when I am in the midst of a difficult time or in the midst of being really busy or just life feeling really full, and sometimes wondering, oh, how am I going to get through this? And something or someone just says something that reminds me of, right, I'm going to trust God in this. Or I have a friend that often she'll say, God's got this. And that's something I've started to say in my own life, that, you know what, God's got this. And so Jesus, I think, just had peace, and he trusted in his Heavenly Father that he would get him through the next few days, and that he was able to take that rest that he needed. He knew who God was. And a verse that has helped me through those times of busyness, of when I think, I just need to push forward, I need to keep going, but realizing actually the best thing for me to do is to be still and know who God is. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46:10. Sometimes the best thing for us is to trust God and just to be still. And maybe you're not quite there yet with um, putting our full putting your full trust in God. So maybe it's just taking a moment throughout the day and just saying, God, thank you for for your presence. Help me to trust in you more. Maybe it's um, asking God that uh, you would just be able to rest and sit in his presence, to find that moment in the day, to have that rest, to be still with him. So, the reflection question that I'd like you to take some time to ask yourself, maybe take a few minutes after you watch this video or in the evening before bed, whenever you can find that moment. I know some of us right now, we have a little more time on our hands. Maybe life doesn't feel as full or as busy right now as we're all at home, not being able to go out as much, not having as many evening activities. And so maybe you don't have that sense that, that sense of urgency or that full busy life right now. But we still are at home, we're still doing things. And we talked the other day about obstacles in our life, those things that are keeping us from encountering God. And so as you think of today and resting with God, I want you to ask the question, how do you find rest when life is difficult and full? We're in a time where a lot of us are feeling anxious and worried about what's to come. So where do we find rest with God during this time? I hope that you know that you're not alone and that God is with you, and that this Easter season, we really take time to put our trust in Him and to know that God's got whatever is in your life, whatever is happening in your life right now. God's got this.